The old coffee shop on Maple Street had seen better days. Its paint was chipping, and the wooden sign creaked whenever the wind picked up. But for Emma Rodriguez, it was the most beautiful place in the world. She wiped down the last table of the day, watching the golden sunlight stream through the dusty windows. The late afternoon rush had finally died down, leaving her alone with the familiar smell of roasted beans and the gentle hum of the espresso machine. Emma had been working at the daily grind for 3 years now, ever since she graduated from college. It wasn't her dream job, but it paid the bills while she tried to figure out what she really wanted to do with her life. At 25, she felt like everyone else had their lives mapped out perfectly, while she was still wandering in circles. The bell above the door chimed, and Emma looked up with her practiced customer service smile ready. But the words caught in her throat when she saw who walked in. He was tall, maybe 6 feet, with dark hair that looked like he'd been running his hands through it. His clothes were wrinkled, and there was something tired about the way he carried himself. But his eyes caught her attention most of all. They were a warm brown, like the coffee she served every day, but there was something deeper there, something that made her forget about the closing routine she was supposed to be finishing. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice rough around the edges. "I know you're probably closing soon, but I was wondering if I could just get a simple black coffee? I've been driving for hours and I really need the caffeine." Emma found herself nodding before she even thought about it. Of course. No problem at all. As she moved behind the counter, she could feel him watching her. Not in a creepy way, but like he was genuinely interested in what she was doing. She poured the coffee carefully, making sure it was perfect even though it was just a simple black coffee. "Here you go," she said, sliding the cup across the counter. Their fingers brushed for just a moment when he reached for it, and she felt a little spark of electricity that made her heart skip. "Thank you," he said, and this time his smile reached his eyes. "I'm Marcus, by the way, Marcus Chen." "Emma," she replied, tucking a strand of her dark hair behind her ear. "Emma Rodriguez." Marcus took a sip of the coffee and closed his eyes for a moment. "This is exactly what I needed. You have no idea." There was something in his voice that made Emma curious. "Long day," Marcus laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Long year. More like it. I just finished my residency at the hospital downtown. Cardiothoracic surgery. 28 hours straight in the operating room, and now I'm trying to decide if I want to accept a fellowship position here or take a job offer I got from a hospital in Seattle." Emma felt her heart sink a little at the mention of Seattle, which surprised her. She barely knew this man. "That's a big decision." "The biggest I've ever had to make," Marcus agreed. He sat down at the counter, even though Emma hadn't officially invited him to stay. But she didn't mind. In fact, she was glad he wasn't in a hurry to leave. "What's making it so hard to decide?" she asked, leaning against the counter. She should have been finishing her closing duties, but somehow that seemed less important right now. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, staring into his coffee. "The Seattle job is everything I thought I wanted. Better pay, prestigious hospital, chance to work with some of the best surgeons in the country." But, Emma prompted gently. "But I grew up here." "This city is home, you know. My parents are here, my sister just had her first baby, and there's something about this place that just feels right." He looked up at Emma, and she felt that spark again. "Plus, I just met this amazing barista who makes the perfect cup of coffee." Emma felt her cheeks warm. "I'm sure there are good coffee shops in Seattle too. I doubt any of them have someone like you working there," Marcus said. And the sincerity in his voice made Emma's heart race. They talked for another hour. Marcus told her about medical school, about the pressure of saving lives every day, about how he sometimes felt like he was losing himself in all the stress and responsibility. Emma found herself opening up too, telling him about her uncertainty about the future, about how she felt stuck between her practical side that said she needed to find a real career and her creative side that just wanted to write stories and travel the world. "You know what's funny?" Marcus said as the sun began to set outside, painting the coffee shop in warm golden light. "I came in here feeling completely lost, and now I feel like maybe things aren't so unclear after all." Emma smiled. "Coffee has that effect on people." "I don't think it was the coffee," Marcus said quietly, his eyes meeting hers. The moment was interrupted by Emma's phone buzzing. She glanced at it and realized how late it had gotten. "Oh my God, I was supposed to meet my roommate an hour ago." She's probably worried sick. Marcus stood up immediately. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to keep you so long. No, it's okay, Emma said quickly. I'm glad you did. They stood there for a moment, neither wanting to break the spell that had settled over them. Finally, Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. This probably sounds crazy, he said, but would you maybe want to have dinner tomorrow? I mean, if you're not busy. I know we just met, but Emma took the card, her fingers brushing his again. I'd like that. I'd like that a lot. As Marcus left, Emma watched him through the window. He turned back once and waved, and she felt her stomach flutter in a way it hadn't in years. She looked down at the card in her hand. Marcus Chen, cardiothoracic surgery resident. There was something surreal about holding it, like she was holding a piece of someone's dreams. That night, as Emma lay in bed, she couldn't stop thinking about Marcus, about the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, about how easy it had been to talk to him, about the way he seemed to really listen when she spoke. She'd dated other guys, of course, but none of them had ever made her feel like this. Like she was interesting and special and worth paying attention to. She thought about what he'd said about feeling lost and then feeling like things were clearer. For the first time in months, maybe years, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Not because of the coffee shop or her job, but because of the connection she'd felt with this stranger who might not be a stranger much longer. The next morning, Emma found herself taking extra care getting ready for work. She chose her favorite jeans and a soft blue sweater that brought out her eyes. She even put on a little makeup, which she rarely bothered with for work. Her roommate Sarah noticed immediately.
Okay, who is he?
Sarah asked, leaning against the bathroom doorframe with a knowing smile.
I don't know what you mean,
Emma said, trying to sound casual as she applied mascara. Emma Rodriguez, I've lived with you for 2 years. You only wear makeup to work when something big is happening. So spill. Emma found herself telling Sarah everything about Marcus, about their conversation, about the dinner plans they'd made. Sarah listened with growing excitement. This is amazing, Sarah practically squealed. You haven't been this excited about a guy since, well, maybe ever. It's probably nothing, Emma said, but even she didn't believe that. We just talked. He might not even show up tonight. He'll show up, Sarah said confidently. Trust me. I saw the way you were glowing when you got home last night. You don't glow like that unless someone is definitely going to show up. All day at work, Emma found herself glancing at the door every time the bell chimed. Part of her hoped Marcus would come in again, just so she could see him and know that last night had really happened. But he didn't appear. And as the afternoon wore on, Emma started to worry that maybe she'd imagined the whole thing. Maybe she'd read too much into their conversation. Maybe he'd thought better of asking her out and decided not to call. But at 5:30, just as Emma was getting ready to leave work, her phone rang. Marcus's name appeared on the screen, and she felt her heart jump. Hi, she answered, trying not to sound too eager. Hi, Marcus said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. I hope I'm not calling too late. I just finished up at the hospital, and I wanted to confirm our dinner plans. That is, if you still want to have dinner with a guy who spends most of his time elbow deep in people's chest cavities. Emma laughed. That's quite a sales pitch. But yes, I definitely still want to have dinner. They made plans to meet at a small Italian restaurant downtown. Nothing too fancy, Marcus had said. Just good food and a chance to talk without the pressure of white tablecloths and intimidating wine lists. Emma appreciated that. She'd been on too many first dates where the guy seemed more interested in impressing her with expensive restaurants than actually getting to know her. As Emma got ready that evening, she felt nervous in the best possible way. The kind of nervous that meant something important was about to happen. She chose a simple black dress that made her feel confident without trying too hard. She wanted to look nice for Marcus, but she also wanted to be herself. The restaurant was perfect, small and warm, with checkered tablecloths and the smell of garlic and basil in the air. Marcus was already there when she arrived, and he stood up when he saw her, which made her heart flutter again. He looked different out of his wrinkled work clothes, still tired around the edges, but more relaxed somehow. You look beautiful, he said simply, and Emma believed him. Dinner was even better than their conversation at the coffee shop. They talked about everything and nothing. Marcus told her about growing up as the son of immigrants who'd worked 3 jobs each to put him through medical school. Emma told him about her family, about her parents who still lived in the small town where she'd grown up, about her dreams of writing a novel someday but never feeling brave enough to start. Why aren't you brave enough? Marcus asked, twirling pasta around his fork. Emma considered the question seriously. I guess because once you start something like that, you have to finish it. And once you finish it, people can judge it. Right now, it's just a dream. And dreams can't disappoint you. But they can't fulfill you either, Marcus pointed out gently. The observation hit Emma harder than she'd expected. You're right. I never thought about it that way. I spent years being afraid to apply to medical school, Marcus admitted. I kept thinking I wasn't smart enough, that I didn't deserve it, that I'd fail and prove everyone right who said a kid like me didn't belong in medicine. But finally my mum sat me down and asked me what I was more afraid of. Failing at something I cared about, or never trying at all. What did you tell her? That I was more afraid of looking back when I'm 60 and wondering what might have happened if I'd been brave enough to try. They were quiet for a moment, both lost in their own thoughts. Then Marcus reached across the table and took Emma's hand. I have a confession to make, he said. I didn't just happen to wander into your coffee shop yesterday. I've been driving past it for weeks trying to work up the courage to go in. Emma's eyes widened. Really? I noticed you through the window one day when I was stuck in traffic. You were laughing at something, and there was this light in your face that just, I don't know. It made me want to know what was so funny. What could make someone look that happy while they're working? Emma felt her cheeks warm. Why didn't you come in sooner? Marcus grinned sheepishly. Because I'm apparently better at cutting people open than I am at talking to beautiful women. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of laughter and stories, and moments where their eyes met across the table and Emma felt like she could see straight into Marcus's soul. When he walked her to her car, she didn't want the night to end. I had an amazing time, she said, fumbling with her keys. So did I, Marcus replied. Emma, I know this might sound crazy, but I feel like I've been waiting my whole life to meet you. Before she could overthink it, Emma stood on her tiptoes and kissed him. It was soft and sweet and perfect, and when they broke apart, Marcus was smiling. I was hoping you'd do that, he said. I was hoping I'd be brave enough to, Emma replied. As she drove home, Emma couldn't stop smiling. For the first time in her adult life, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be, with exactly the right person. She didn't know what would happen next, but for once, that uncertainty felt exciting instead of terrifying. The next few weeks passed like a dream. Marcus and Emma saw each other every day that he wasn't working a double shift at the hospital. They had coffee dates and dinner dates and long walks through the park. They talked about their dreams and their fears and discovered that they fit together in ways that surprised them both. Marcus was nothing like the guys Emma usually dated. He was serious about his work, but never took himself too seriously. He made her laugh until her sides hurt, and he listened to her with an intensity that made her feel like the most interesting person in the world. Most importantly, he encouraged her to be brave in ways she never had before. I started writing, she told him one evening as they sat on a bench watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. You did? Marcus's face lit up with genuine excitement. Emma, that's amazing. What are you writing about? It's stupid, Emma said, suddenly shy. I doubt that very much. It's about a girl who works in a coffee shop and meets this surgeon who changes her whole perspective on life. Marcus was quiet for a moment, and Emma worried she'd said too much. Then he took her hand and squeezed it gently. I think that sounds like the kind of story the world needs more of, he said. Stories about how two people can find each other and make each other better. That night, lying in bed, Emma thought about how much her life had changed in such a short time. A month ago, she'd felt stuck and directionless. Now, she felt like anything was possible. She was writing again. She was happy at work because she had something to look forward to after. And most importantly, she was falling in love. The thought should have scared her. She'd always been cautious about love, afraid of getting hurt, afraid of losing herself in someone else. But with Marcus, she didn't feel like she was losing herself. She felt like she was becoming more herself than she'd ever been before. The only shadow on their perfect beginning was the decision Marcus still had to make about Seattle. They didn't talk about it much, but Emma could see it weighing on him. Sometimes she'd catch him staring into space with a worried expression, and she knew he was thinking about his future and trying to figure out where she fit into it. Emma tried not to think about it too much. It was too early in their relationship to factor into such a big decision, wasn't it? They'd only known each other for a few weeks. She couldn't expect him to turn down an amazing opportunity for someone he'd just met. But late at night, when she was alone with her thoughts, Emma found herself hoping desperately that Marcus would choose to stay, not just for her, but for all the possibilities they represented together, for the golden moments they shared watching sunsets, for the way he made her believe in herself, for the feeling that they were building something beautiful together. As autumn deepened and the days grew shorter, Emma found herself treasuring every moment with Marcus even more. Each sunset felt precious, each laugh felt like a gift, and each kiss felt like a promise of something wonderful. She was falling deeper in love every day, and for the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid of where that fall might take her. The crisis came on a Tuesday evening in November. Emma was at home working on her story when her phone rang. Marcus's name flashed on the screen, but when she answered, his voice sounded different, strained and tired in a way she hadn't heard before. "Emma, I need to see you. Can you meet me at the park, our usual spot by the lake?" Something in his tone made Emma's stomach drop. "Of course. Is everything okay? Just please come. I'll explain everything when you get here." Emma drove to the park with her heart racing. The November air was crisp and cold, and most of the leaves had fallen from the trees. The park looked bare and somehow lonely in the gathering dusk. She found Marcus sitting on their favorite bench, staring out at the lake with his shoulders hunched against the cold. "Marcus?" Emma approached carefully, sensing that whatever he needed to tell her was important, and probably not good news. He looked up when he heard her voice, and Emma's heart broke a little at the expression on his face. He looked defeated and sad and older than his 28 years. "Sit with me?" he asked, patting the bench beside him. Emma sat down and took his hand. It was cold, and she realized he'd probably been sitting here for a while. "What's wrong?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, gathering his thoughts. "I got a call today from the hospital in Seattle. They're pressuring me to make a decision about the fellowship. They need an answer by the end of the week." Emma felt her heart sink, but she tried to keep her voice steady. And the fellowship director here? Dr. Morrison called me into his office today. The position I thought I might get here? The funding fell through. They can't offer me anything for at least another year, maybe longer. The words hit Emma like a physical blow. She'd known this was a possibility, but somehow she'd convinced herself that everything would work out, that Marcus would find a way to stay, that their perfect beginning wouldn't be cut short by circumstances beyond their control. "So you're going to take the Seattle position," she said quietly. It wasn't a question. "I don't know." Marcus turned to face her, and she could see the conflict in his eyes. "Emma, this is the hardest decision I've ever had to make. That fellowship in Seattle is everything I've worked for. It's with Dr. Sarah Kim, who literally wrote the textbook on pediatric heart surgery. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." Emma felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them back. She wouldn't make this harder for him than it already was. But leaving you feels impossible. These past 2 months with you have been the happiest of my life. You've made me remember who I am outside of medicine, outside of all the pressure and stress. When I'm with you, I feel like myself again." Emma's heart was breaking and soaring at the same time. "Marcus, I know it's crazy," he continued, his words coming faster now. "We've only known each other for 2 months. It's not logical to turn down the opportunity of a lifetime for someone I just met. But Emma, what I feel for you isn't logical. It's bigger than logic." Emma stared at him, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. "Are you saying you want to stay?" "I'm saying I'm terrified of leaving you. But I'm also terrified of staying and wondering for the rest of my life if I gave up my dreams for a relationship that might not last." The honesty in his words stung, but Emma appreciated it. She'd rather have painful truth than comfortable lies. "I understand. Do you?" Marcus asked. "Because I don't. I don't understand how I can love someone so much after such a short time. I don't understand how the thought of leaving you makes me feel physically sick. I don't understand any of this." Emma felt her breath catch. "You love me?" Marcus's expression softened. "Of course I love you. How could you not know that? Emma, you're the first thing I think about when I wake up and the last thing I think about before I fall asleep. You're the reason I've started believing in happiness again." Emma felt tears spill down her cheeks. "I love you too. I love you so much it scares me." They sat in silence for a moment, holding hands and watching the last light fade from the sky. Emma's mind was racing, trying to think of solutions, trying to figure out a way they could make this work. "What if I came with you?" she said suddenly. Marcus looked at her in surprise. "To Seattle? Why not?" I can work in a coffee shop anywhere. I can write anywhere. My life here isn't exactly tying me down. Emma, you can't uproot your entire life for me. What about your family? Your friends? Your writing group? What about them? Emma said, warming to the idea. My family is a phone call away. Sarah will understand. And my writing group? Honestly, I've been thinking about quitting anyway. They spend more time critiquing grammar than actually encouraging people to write. Marcus shook his head. I can't let you do that. What if you hate Seattle? What if you resent me for taking you away from everything you know? What if I love it? What if it's exactly the adventure I'd been afraid to have? They argued about it gently for the next hour, Marcus insisting that he couldn't ask her to sacrifice her life for his career, Emma insisting that following the person she loved to a new city wasn't a sacrifice, it was a choice, a brave choice, the kind she'd never made before. I need to think about this, Marcus said finally. I need to make sure I'm making the right decision for both of us. When do you have to decide? Friday, 3 days. Emma nodded, trying to project a confidence she didn't entirely feel. Okay, 3 days. We can figure this out in 3 days. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had happened in the past few hours. She'd never imagined herself following a man to another city. She'd always been independent, practical, the kind of person who made careful plans and stuck to them. But the thought of losing Marcus felt worse than the thought of leaving everything familiar behind. She thought about what he'd said about being afraid of wondering what if for the rest of his life. Emma realized she had her own what if to consider. What if she let fear keep her from taking this leap? What if she stayed safe and comfortable and let the love of her life slip away because she was too scared to try something new? The next morning, Emma called in sick to work. She needed to think, and she couldn't do that while serving coffee and making small talk with customers. Instead, she went for a long walk through the city, looking at all the familiar places with new eyes. She walked past the coffee shop where she'd met Marcus, past the restaurant where they'd had their first real date, past the bookstore where Marcus had bought her a leather journal for her writing. All these places held memories now, but they were just places. The memories lived in her heart, and she could carry those anywhere. Emma found herself at the library, sitting in the same chair where she'd spent countless hours as a child, dreaming of all the places books could take her. She'd always loved stories about brave heroines who left everything behind for love and adventure. Now she had the chance to be one of those heroines, and she was terrified. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Can we talk tonight? I've been thinking about everything you said. Emma's heart jumped. Of course. Same place. Actually, can you come to my apartment? I want to cook for you. Emma had only been to Marcus's apartment a few times. He was always so busy at the hospital that they usually met in public places. The fact that he wanted her to come over felt significant somehow. That evening, Emma knocked on Marcus's door with her heart in her throat. When he opened it, she could see immediately that he'd been thinking hard about their conversation. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his hair was more disheveled than usual. Hi, he said softly, stepping aside to let her in. Hi. Marcus's apartment was small but warm, filled with medical textbooks and photos of his family. The smell of garlic and herbs filled the air, and Emma could see that he'd set the small dining table for two. You really did cook, she said, touched by the effort he'd made. Pasta primavera. It's about the only thing I know how to make that doesn't come out of a microwave. They ate dinner mostly in comfortable silence, both of them aware that they were building up to an important conversation. Emma watched Marcus carefully, trying to read his mood, but his expression was unreadable. Finally, as they were finishing their meal, Marcus reached across the table and took her hand. I've been thinking about what you said, about coming with me to Seattle. Emma's heart started racing. And I realized something. I've been so focused on not wanting to ask you to sacrifice for me that I forgot to consider what you want. What would make you happy? Being with you makes me happy, Emma said simply.
But is that enough?
Emma, I need you to really think about this. Seattle is 3,000 miles away. You'd be leaving your job, your apartment, your whole support system. You'd be starting over in a city where you don't know anyone except me. Emma had been thinking about exactly that for the past 24 hours. And yes, it's scary. But Marcus, staying here without you is scarier. I've spent my whole life playing it safe, staying comfortable, never taking risks. Maybe it's time I tried being brave. Marcus squeezed her hand. You're sure? I'm terrified, Emma admitted. But I'm sure. I love you. And I want to build a life with you. I don't care if that life starts in Seattle or on the moon. Marcus stood up and pulled Emma into his arms, holding her tight against his chest. She could feel the tension leaving his body, and she realized he'd been holding his breath waiting for her answer. I love you so much, he whispered into her hair. I promise I'll do everything I can to make sure you don't regret this. I won't regret it, Emma said, and as the words left her mouth, she knew they were true. They spent the next hour making plans. Marcus would accept the fellowship and start in January. Emma would give her notice at the coffee shop and start looking for jobs in Seattle. They'd find an apartment together, something small and cozy where they could start their new life. There's something else, Marcus said as they curled up together on his couch. Something I want to ask you. Emma looked up at him curiously. What? I know we're moving fast, maybe too fast by most people's standards. But Emma, when I think about my future, I can't imagine it without you. I don't want to imagine it without you. Emma's heart started racing again. Marcus, what are you saying? I'm saying that I know this is crazy, and I know we haven't been together very long, but I also know that what we have is real. It's the kind of love people write songs about, the kind that changes everything. Marcus shifted on the couch, reaching into his pocket. Emma's eyes widened as he pulled out a small velvet box. Emma Rodriguez, he said, his voice shaking slightly. Will you marry me? Emma stared at the ring in the box. It was simple and beautiful, with a single diamond that caught the lamplight and threw tiny rainbows on the wall. But more than the ring, she was struck by the look in Marcus's eyes. Pure love and hope and a vulnerability that took her breath away. Yes, she whispered, and then louder, yes, of course, yes. Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger with trembling hands, and Emma marveled at how perfectly it fit. Like it had been made for her, like everything about this moment had been destined. They held each other on the couch, talking quietly about their plans, about the wedding they'd have, about the life they'd build together in Seattle. Emma felt like she was living in a dream, but the weight of the ring on her finger reminded her that it was real. My parents are going to think we're insane, she said, laughing. My parents are going to love you, Marcus replied. My mum has been asking when I'm going to bring home a nice girl for years. She's going to be over the moon. As the night wore on, Emma found herself thinking about how much her life was about to change. In a matter of weeks, she'd go from being a single barista with no clear direction to being an engaged woman about to move across the country with the love of her life. It should have been overwhelming, but instead it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Are you scared? Marcus asked softly. Terrified, Emma admitted. But not of marrying you. I'm scared of the move, of starting over, of not knowing what I'm doing. But I'm not scared of us. Good, Marcus said, kissing the top of her head. Because we're going to be amazing together. I can feel it. Emma believed him. For the first time in her life, she was taking a huge leap of faith. But she wasn't jumping alone. She was jumping with someone who loved her enough to catch her, someone who wanted to build a life with her, someone who saw her potential even when she couldn't see it herself. The next morning, Emma woke up in Marcus's arms, with sunlight streaming through his bedroom windows. For a moment, she forgot where she was, and then she saw the ring on her finger and remembered everything. She was engaged. She was moving to Seattle. She was about to start the biggest adventure of her life. Good morning, fiancé, Marcus said sleepily, and Emma's heart fluttered at the word. Good morning, future husband. They lay in bed for a while, making quiet plans and sharing gentle kisses. Emma had never felt so content, so certain that she was exactly where she belonged. Later that day, they drove to Emma's apartment to tell Sarah the news. Emma's roommate took one look at them and started squealing before they'd even said a word. Oh my God, you're engaged! Sarah shrieked, grabbing Emma's hand to look at the ring. This is so romantic! Tell me everything! They spent the afternoon sharing the story with Sarah, who cried happy tears and insisted on opening a bottle of champagne she'd been saving for a special occasion. As Emma watched her best friends celebrate their news, she felt a pang of sadness about leaving, but it was overwhelmed by excitement about the future. That evening, Emma and Marcus called their families. Emma's parents were shocked but happy, promising to visit Seattle as soon as they were settled. Marcus's parents were delighted, with his mother immediately starting to plan an engagement party. She wants to meet you as soon as possible, Marcus told Emma after hanging up with his family. I think she's afraid you'll come to your senses and run away before she gets to meet her future daughter-in-law. Never, Emma said, cuddling closer to Marcus on the couch. I'm not going anywhere. Well, except Seattle. As they sat together in Emma's apartment, surrounded by moving boxes they'd started packing, Emma felt a deep sense of peace. Yes, she was scared about the future. Yes, she was sad about leaving the familiar behind. But she was also more excited than she'd ever been in her life. She thought about the story she'd been writing, about the girl who met a surgeon and had her whole life changed. Emma realized that she'd been writing her own story without knowing it. And unlike the stories in books, this one was just beginning. The golden moments at Dusk had led to something bigger than either of them had imagined. They'd led to a promise, to a future, to a love that was brave enough to take risks and strong enough to weather any storm that might come. Emma looked at her ring glittering in the lamplight and smiled. This was what happiness felt like. This was what it meant to be truly, completely alive. 6 months later, Emma stood at the window of their small apartment in Capitol Hill, watching the Seattle skyline glow in the evening light. The city was beautiful in a different way than home. All steel and glass and water, with mountains rising in the distance like something from a postcard. She still missed the familiar streets and faces of her hometown, but Seattle was beginning to feel like home too. The move had been everything she'd expected, and nothing like she'd planned. The first few weeks had been difficult. Emma had felt lost and overwhelmed in a city where everything was unfamiliar. She'd struggled to find work, struggled to make friends, struggled with the reality of building a life from scratch. There had been moments when she'd wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake, but Marcus had been her anchor through it all. When she'd broken down crying after her 5th job rejection, he'd held her and reminded her that brave things took time. When she'd felt isolated and lonely, he'd surprised her with tickets to a writing workshop where she'd met other aspiring authors. When she'd questioned whether she belonged in Seattle, he'd taken her on long walks through different neighborhoods until they'd found Pike Place Market, where the energy and creativity reminded her why she'd fallen in love with writing in the first place. Now Emma worked part-time at a cozy bookstore cafe near the university, a job that combined her love of coffee with her passion for books. It didn't pay as much as her old job, but it fed her soul in ways she hadn't expected. She was surrounded by stories all day, and the customers were often writers and students who loved talking about books as much as she did. More importantly, Emma had finished her novel. The story that had started as a way to process her feelings about meeting Marcus had grown into something bigger. A real book with real characters facing real challenges. She'd even found the courage to submit it to agents, though she was still waiting to hear back from most of them. "Emma!" Marcus's voice called from the kitchen. "Are you ready for dinner?" Emma smiled and turned away from the window. Marcus had been working incredibly long hours at the hospital as he adjusted to his fellowship, but he'd insisted on cooking for her tonight. It was their 6-month anniversary of moving to Seattle, and he'd wanted to celebrate. "Coming," she called back, making her way to their small dining area. Marcus had transformed their tiny kitchen into something magical. Candles flickered on the table, and he'd somehow managed to find fresh flowers despite his busy schedule. The smell of something delicious filled the air, and Emma felt her heart swell with love for this man who worked 12-hour days and still found ways to make their life beautiful. "This is amazing," Emma said, looking at the spread he'd prepared. "When did you have time to do all this? I may have bribed one of the residents to cover for me during lunch so I could go shopping," Marcus admitted with a sheepish grin. "But you're worth a little creative scheduling." They ate slowly, savoring both the food and each other's company. Marcus told her about his day, about the surgery he'd assisted with, about the mentor who was teaching him techniques he'd only read about in textbooks. Emma told him about the customer who'd spent 2 hours discussing Jane Austen with her, about the poetry reading she was thinking of attending next week. "You know what I love most about our life here?" Marcus said as they finished dinner. "What?" "How we've both become more ourselves. You're braver than you were 6 months ago. You're taking chances with your writing, meeting new people, exploring a new city. And I feel more balanced. Work is still important, but it's not everything anymore. I have you, I have our life together, I have reasons to come home." Emma reached across the table and took his hand. "I love our life too. Even when it's hard, even when I'm scared, I love that we're building it together." Marcus squeezed her hand, and Emma saw something shift in his expression. He looked nervous suddenly, the way he had the night he'd proposed. Actually, he said, there's something I want to talk to you about. Something important. Emma felt her stomach flutter with anticipation. Okay. Marcus stood up and began pacing around their small living room, running his hands through his hair the way he did when he was thinking hard about something. Marcus, you're making me nervous. Just tell me whatever it is. He stopped pacing and turned to face her. I got a call today. From Dr. Morrison back home. Emma's heart sank. Dr. Morrison was the fellowship director who'd told Marcus there was no funding for a position. If he was calling now, it could only mean one thing. The funding came through. Marcus continued. A big grant came in, and they want to offer me a position. A really good position, actually. Better than what I have here in some ways. Emma felt the world tilt around her. They'd built a life here. They were happy here. And now everything was about to change again. Do you want to take it? She asked quietly. That's just it, Marcus said, sitting down beside her on the couch. 6 months ago, that call would have been everything I wanted to hear. The chance to go home, to work with doctors I've known for years, to be near our families. And now I realize that home isn't a place anymore. Home is wherever you are. Emma, I don't want to go back. I want to stay here, in this city where we built something beautiful together. I want to see where this fellowship leads. I want to watch you become the successful author I know you're going to be. I want to make Seattle our permanent home. Emma felt tears of relief spring to her eyes. Really? Really? I called Dr. Morrison back and told him thank you, but no. Seattle is where I belong now. Where we belong! Emma threw her arms around Marcus, holding him tight. I love you so much. And I love our life here. I love our tiny apartment and our favorite coffee shop, and the way the mountains look when the sun sets behind them. There's one more thing, Marcus said, pulling back to look at her. I know we've been talking about a small wedding next year, maybe something back home with just our families. But Emma, I don't want to wait anymore. I want to marry you now, here in Seattle. I want to start our married life in the city where we learn to be brave together. Emma's heart raced with excitement. Are you suggesting we elope? I'm suggesting we have the wedding we want, not the wedding other people expect us to have. We could get married at the botanical garden you love, or on the waterfront, or even in Pike Place Market if that's what would make you happy. Just us and a few friends and the promise we want to make to each other. Emma thought about the elaborate wedding her mother had been planning, about the stress of coordinating schedules and venues and guest lists. Then she thought about marrying Marcus in one of the places they'd discovered together, surrounded only by the love they'd built. Yes, she said without hesitation. Let's do it. Let's get married here. They spent the rest of the evening making plans. They'd get married in 6 weeks, at the Japanese garden in the International District where they'd had one of their first Seattle dates. They'd invite just a few people. Sarah and Marcus's sister, who'd become fast friends during their visits. Their parents, if they could come on short notice. A couple of new friends they'd made in Seattle. I want to write my own vows, Emma said as they lay in bed that night, making lists and dreaming out loud. I was hoping you'd say that, Marcus replied. I want to tell you exactly how I feel, in my own words. Emma curled up against Marcus's chest, listening to his heartbeat and thinking about how much had changed since that first evening in the coffee shop. They'd gone from strangers to friends, to lovers to engaged couple to two people building a completely new life together. And through it all, the golden moments at dusk had remained constant. No matter how busy or stressed or uncertain they'd been, they'd always found time to watch the sunset together, to talk about their day, to remember what they meant to each other. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of wedding planning. Emma found a simple but elegant dress at a vintage shop on Capitol Hill. Marcus bought a new suit that made him look impossibly handsome. They tasted cakes and chose flowers and wrote vows that made them both cry when they read them to each other in private. Emma's parents flew out a few days before the wedding, along with Marcus's family. Watching the two families meet and bond over their shared love for Emma and Marcus filled her heart with joy. Her mother, who'd initially been disappointed about the small ceremony, fell in love with Seattle and declared it the most romantic city she'd ever seen. You chose well, Miha, her father told her the night before the wedding as they walked along the waterfront. This city suits you, and that boy loves you like you deserve to be loved. Emma squeezed her father's arm. Unhappy, Papa. Really, truly happy. I can see that. You're glowing, like you have a light inside you that wasn't there before. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright, with the kind of crisp autumn sunshine that made Seattle look like a fairy tale. Emma woke up in Sarah's hotel room, where she'd spent the night according to tradition, and felt a deep sense of calm. She wasn't nervous about marrying Marcus. If anything, she was impatient to make it official, to call him her husband instead of her fiancé. "You look beautiful," Sarah said as she helped Emma into her dress. It was ivory silk with delicate lace sleeves, simple but elegant, perfect for a garden ceremony. "I feel beautiful," Emma replied, and it was true. She felt radiant with happiness and love and anticipation for the future. The ceremony was everything Emma had dreamed it would be. The Japanese garden was peaceful and romantic, with fall leaves carpeting the paths and a gentle fountain providing background music. Their small group of family and friends formed an intimate circle around them as they exchanged vows. When it was Emma's turn to speak, she looked into Marcus's eyes and felt her heart overflow with emotion. "Marcus," she began, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "6 months ago, you asked me to take the biggest leap of faith of my life, to leave everything familiar and build something new with you. Today, I want to promise you that I'll keep taking leaps of faith for the rest of our lives. I promise to be brave with you, to dream with you, to build a life that's bigger and more beautiful than either of us could create alone. I promise to love you through every sunset and every sunrise, through every golden moment and every difficult day. You are my home, my adventure, and my heart. I can't wait to see what we'll discover together." Marcus's vows were equally beautiful, promising to love and support Emma's dreams, to build a life full of golden moments, to be her partner in every adventure life might bring. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Marcus kissed Emma with such joy and tenderness that their small audience burst into spontaneous applause. Emma felt like she was floating, like she was living in the most perfect moment of her life. The reception was held at a small restaurant overlooking Elliott Bay. As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the water, Emma and Marcus shared their first dance as a married couple. Around them, their loved ones celebrated, but Emma felt like she and Marcus were in their own private world. "Chen," Marcus whispered in her ear as they swayed to the music. "Perfect," Emma whispered back. "Everything about this feels perfect." Later that evening, as their families headed back to their hotels and Sarah caught a late flight home, Emma and Marcus found themselves alone in their apartment. But it felt different now. It wasn't just the place where they lived together anymore. It was their home as a married couple, the beginning of their life as husband and wife. They sat on their small balcony sharing a piece of wedding cake and watching the city lights twinkle below them. The autumn air was crisp but not cold, and Emma was content to curl up against Marcus's side and simply exist in the moment. "Do you ever think about that first night we met?" Marcus asked, running his fingers through Emma's hair. "What would have happened if I hadn't gotten up the courage to come into the coffee shop?" "I try not to think about it," Emma said with a shiver. "It's too scary to imagine, all those sliding door moments that led us to each other." "I think we would have found each other somehow," Marcus said thoughtfully. "Maybe not that day, maybe not that way, but somehow. Some loves are just meant to be." Emma looked up at her husband, this amazing man who'd taught her to be brave and dream big and believe in love that changes everything. "I think you're right. We were meant to find each other." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the last light fade from the sky. Emma thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment, the coffee shop meeting that had started it all, the difficult decision about Seattle, the scary but wonderful move across the country, the challenges they'd faced and overcome together, and now this. Their wedding day, the beginning of their married life, the promise of all the golden moments yet to come. "What are you thinking about?" Marcus asked softly. "Everything," Emma said. "How much has changed, how much we've grown, how excited I am about our future." "Me too," Marcus agreed. "I love our story, Emma. I love how brave we were, how we took chances on each other even when it was scary." Emma smiled and snuggled closer to her husband. "I love our story too. But you know what I love even more?" "What?" "That we're just getting started. This is just chapter 1 of the rest of our lives." Marcus kissed the top of her head. "Then let's make it a really good story, one full of adventure and love and golden moments that last forever." As they sat together on their balcony, watching the stars appear in the Seattle sky, Emma felt a deep sense of gratitude for the twists of fate that had brought them together. She thought about the girl she'd been 6 months ago, scared to take risks, afraid to believe in love that might not last. That girl could never have imagined the woman she'd become. Brave enough to move across the country, confident enough to chase her dreams, secure enough in love to make promises that would last a lifetime. The golden moments at dusk had become so much more than beautiful sunsets shared with someone special. They'd become a symbol of everything beautiful about love, the way it changed you, challenged you, made you brave enough to reach for happiness you'd never thought possible. As Emma Chen settled into her husband's arms, she knew that whatever the future held, they'd face it together. They'd keep finding golden moments in ordinary days, keep building a love that was strong enough to weather any storm, keep writing the most beautiful story either of them had ever imagined. Their love story had begun with two hearts, one promise, and endless passion. And Emma knew it would continue that way for all the years to come. The golden moments at dusk were no longer just beautiful endings to their days. They'd become beautiful beginnings to the rest of their lives. 3 years later, as Emma published her third novel and Marcus was promoted to attending surgeon, they still made time for those golden moments. Whether they were watching the sunset from their new house overlooking Puget Sound or traveling to new cities for Emma's book tours, they never forgot the importance of stopping, breathing, and appreciating the beauty of their life together. Their love had grown deeper and stronger with each passing year, rooted in the bravery they'd found in each other, and nurtured by countless golden moments shared in gratitude and joy. They'd learned that the best love stories weren't just about falling in love, but about choosing love every day, about growing together and supporting each other's dreams and finding magic in the ordinary moments that made up a life. As Emma often wrote in her novels now, the most beautiful stories weren't about perfect people living perfect lives. They were about imperfect people who loved each other enough to be brave, to take chances, to build something beautiful together one golden moment at a time. And that was exactly the story she and Marcus continued to write with their lives. One sunset at a time, one promise kept at a time, one golden moment at a time.